For years, Earth tried to join the Galactic Council. Humans worked hard to build trust with other alien races. They followed the rules, shared their technology, and sent aid during crisis. Slowly, the Council began to accept Earth as a serious power. After much debate, the Council finally invited Earth to join as a full member. It was a historic moment. Earth chose Ambassador Juno to represent humanity. He was calm, smart, and always believed in peace. People across the planet celebrated. Juno boarded the starship Unity and left for the Galactic Council station, located near the twin stars of Xerilon. The future looked bright. But things didn't feel right when Juno arrived. The space around the Council station was filled with warships. Security was tighter than usual. Council guards didn't smile or offer greetings. Juno's landing was delayed by 2 hours with no clear reason. He sent a message back to Earth. Something is wrong here. Stay alert. That was the last clear message Earth received. The next message came after 16 hours, and it was not from Juno. Across the galaxy, every major channel was taken over by the Galactic Council. A serious-looking alien, Counselor Ver, leader of the auxiliary race, stood in front of the Council's Grand Hall. Behind him, 2 guards held Ambassador Juno in chains. His face was bruised, his suit torn. His eyes were calm, but tired. This human, Var said, has been found guilty of crimes against the galaxy. He used diplomacy to hide Earth's plans for expansion and control. Today, he will pay the price. Earth's leaders watched in shock. No trial had been held. No evidence had been shared. Juno had not even spoken a word in his defense. Then, before anyone could react, Var gave the order. The guards pressed a device to Juno's neck. In seconds, he collapsed. Dead. Earth froze. All around the planet, people watched in horror. Some cried. Others screamed. But in the government bunker under New Geneva, President Laura Mendez stood silently. Her voice was low, cold, controlled. Activate Protocol Fury. In seconds, Earth's military command centers came alive. Quiet alarms rang. Orders were sent. Satellites changed direction. Hidden ships turned toward deep space. Protocol Fury was something only the highest-ranking officials knew about. It was a secret plan made years ago, just in case the Council ever betrayed Earth. Back on the Council station, some aliens cheered. Others looked unsure. Even a few Council members seemed shocked by Var's actions, but it was done. Juno was dead. The Council thought Earth would protest. They expected angry messages, maybe even a few trade threats. But Earth said nothing. In fact, Earth went completely silent. For the next 48 hours, no one heard a word from any human colony, station, or ship. Council sensors noticed strange activity, ships moving into deep space, old comm stations shutting down, and satellites going offline. But no one could make sense of it. Then, a whisper started to spread across the stars. Earth is preparing something. A trade convoy near the edge of human space sent one final message before vanishing. We just saw 3 unknown ships. No lights, no signals. Then, nothing. The Council tried to calm things down. They said Juno's death was justice, and Earth would understand in time. But deep down, some Council members began to feel afraid. Because history had shown one thing again and again. When Earth gets quiet, something big is coming. After the shocking execution of Ambassador Juno, Earth fell into an eerie silence. For days, there were no public speeches, no diplomatic protests, no calls for justice. It was as if the entire planet had turned its back on the galaxy. But behind closed doors, things were far from quiet. In the secure underground bunkers of Earth's command centers, high-ranking officials gathered in a shadowed room. The air was thick with tension. President Laura Mendez stood at the head of the table, her expression cold and determined. The usual calm of the Earth's leaders was gone. They had witnessed the unthinkable, and now they had to act. Activate Protocol Fury, she ordered, her voice unwavering. Protocol Fury was a set of plans known only to the highest officials on Earth. It was a program created in case the worst happened, if the Galactic Council ever turned against humanity. It wasn't just a military response. It was a full-scale, all-encompassing strategy that involved everything Earth had hidden away in its secret space bases. Technology, ships, weapons, and even entire fleets had been waiting in silence for years, locked away from the public eye. The first phase of the protocol was simple: shut down all communication. Earth would no longer answer any calls or respond to any messages from the Council or its allies. The galaxy would see Earth as a mystery. The Council would be left to wonder what humanity was planning, all while Earth prepared its counter moves in secret. In the hidden space yards around Mars, construction began. Giant ships that had been in dry dock for years, just waiting for this moment, were pulled out of their hidden hangars. They were unlike anything the Council had seen. No markings, no names, just massive, sleek ships designed for one purpose: to strike with precision and speed. They were ships built not for war, but for something much worse: the ability to make an entire fleet disappear before it even realized it was under attack. On Earth, the public remained unaware of what was unfolding. News channels went dark. The usual broadcasts of entertainment, news, and science disappeared. No one knew why the government had gone silent, but there was a strange feeling in the air, a growing unease. People looked up at the sky, wondering if Earth had truly been betrayed by the Council, or if something even worse was about to happen. Meanwhile, the military forces stationed in the outer reaches of the solar system went into full alert. Earth's deep space satellites, once used only for research, were now repurposed. They began monitoring the movements of every ship in the galaxy. They didn't just track ships. They could now watch them from the shadows, invisible to the naked eye. Every Council fleet was under surveillance, and no one realized they were being watched. The Council, meanwhile, assumed that Earth was still in shock. They sent multiple messages to Earth, trying to calm tensions, but every message was met with silence. Some Council leaders feared that Earth might be preparing for some sort of violent revenge, but the rest of the galaxy wasn't worried. After all, Earth had always been known for diplomacy and peace, right? Days turned into weeks, and Earth's silence became a haunting mystery. Rumors started to spread throughout the galaxy. People began to speak in hushed voices about strange sightings near the edges of Earth's space. Ships had appeared from nowhere, flying in ways that were impossible for any known technology. These ships were fast, almost too fast. They could disappear in the blink of an eye and reappear miles away in an instant. Some claimed to have seen flashes of light, like giant explosions, but then everything went dark again. By the time the Council realized it had underestimated Earth, it was already too late. Earth wasn't preparing for war in the traditional sense. There were no massive fleets assembling, no armies marching to battle. Instead, they were preparing a far more dangerous kind of weapon, one that didn't rely on physical force, but on strategy and misdirection. In a deep space facility, hidden far beyond Neptune, a new form of technology was tested. It wasn't a weapon, per se, but rather a ship equipped with something that hadn't been seen before: an invisibility field. A field so powerful that it made ships completely undetectable, not just from sensors, but from the naked eye as well. This was Earth's trump card, something the Council never could have predicted. Earth was not only capable of hiding its ships in plain sight, but it could also strike from anywhere, at any time. Earth had already begun deploying its first wave of these stealth ships to the farthest reaches of Council space. They didn't fire a single shot. They didn't even show their presence. They simply observed, waited, and watched as the Council moved its fleets closer to Earth's borders. The only thing the Council could hear now was the silence of a planet that had been wronged, a planet that was now playing its hand in a way the galaxy had never expected. And all the while, Earth's leaders watched and waited, knowing that the time for vengeance or justice would come soon. The silence from Earth stretched on, sending ripples of uncertainty across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, still convinced that Earth was only reeling from the loss of their envoy, made one grave mistake. They underestimated humanity's ability to act when pushed too far. It had been almost 2 weeks since Ambassador Juno's execution. Council members continued with their daily tasks, confident that Earth was too weak, too shocked to respond. But behind the scenes, something far more dangerous was unfolding. The first sign came when a large trade convoy, headed toward the outer rim of Council space, reported a strange occurrence. A convoy of PHY ships, all carrying valuable resources, disappeared without a trace. The ships were last seen near a sector that had previously been monitored closely by the Council. The sensors had shown nothing unusual, no signs of attack, no malfunction. It was as though the ships had vanished into thin air. The message from the convoy's lead ship was simple, but chilling. "There's something out here. We don't know what it is." The ships, they just disappeared. The Council dismissed it as a freak occurrence, nothing more than a minor glitch in their systems. But deep down, a small seed of doubt began to grow in the minds of a few Council members. They were beginning to wonder if Earth was somehow involved, but they had no proof. There was no way to track what they couldn't see. Then came the second event. A Council warship, part of a routine patrol near the nebula system, reported a malfunction with its primary engines. The crew was baffled. There were no external attacks, no sign of sabotage. The malfunction seemed impossible. It was as though the ship had simply stopped functioning, as if a hidden hand had reached out and gently turned off its engines. For hours, the warship drifted, helpless in space. The crew tried everything they could to restore power, but nothing worked. They finally sent out a distress signal, but it was intercepted before it could reach any of the Council's main relay stations. By the time the distress call was received, the warship had been dragged deep into the blackness of space, and no one knew what had happened to it. The crew vanished without a trace. No wreckage, no signs of struggle, nothing at all. The galaxy was beginning to feel the weight of Earth's silence. And then came the first strike. No warning, no signals, just sudden, shocking action. A group of Council freighters, carrying critical supplies to the core worlds, was quietly bypassed by a fleet of Earth ships. The Earth ships were unlike anything the Council had ever seen. They appeared out of nowhere. No warning, no signals, no presence. They didn't fire weapons. They didn't engage in combat. They simply disabled the freighters. Each ship, one by one, was rendered powerless, floating helplessly in space. For a moment, it seemed like some sort of strange technical malfunction. The freighter's systems were failing one by one. The crew members on board couldn't understand what was happening. There were no signs of external damage, no enemy ships visible, just a strange, creeping power loss that spread from ship to ship. And then, as quickly as they arrived, the Earth ships disappeared back into the depths of space. No one knew where they had gone or how they had done it. The freighters, now completely powerless, were left stranded in the vastness of space, a haunting reminder of Earth's unseen presence. Council commanders scrambled to assess what had happened, but they were too late. The first ripple of panic spread through the ranks. The once unshakable confidence the Council had in its own power began to crack. They had expected to crush Earth's spirit, to show them their place. But Earth wasn't just sitting back. Earth was playing a game that no one had expected. A game of patience, precision, and control. A few of the Council's more paranoid members began to discuss the possibility that Earth's ships had developed a new technology, something that could hide them completely from the Council's sensors, something that allowed them to strike with no warning and leave without a trace. Some even whispered that Earth had built ships capable of traveling through space in ways the Council's best minds couldn't understand. What made it worse was that Earth wasn't responding to the Council's messages. There was no declaration of war, no demands, no threats. The Earth ships did not even engage in a battle. They simply disabled the ships and vanished. The Council was left fumbling in the dark, unsure of what Earth was capable of. The most terrifying thing of all was that Earth was making no demands. There was no threat of full-scale war. It was as if Earth had turned into a ghost. There, but not there. Watching, waiting, and slowly tightening the noose. The Council was beginning to understand that Earth was not playing the same game they were. And the more they waited, the more they realized. Earth had learned how to strike when no one was looking. The Council's confidence began to shatter. Was this really just Earth's way of showing they could fight back, or was something far more dangerous coming? The galaxy was about to find out. The Council's nervousness grew with each passing day. What had started as small, unexplained incidents now seemed like a signal that Earth was sending something far more important, a message. But the Council couldn't figure out what that message truly meant. While Council leaders debated what Earth's actions might mean, Earth itself remained quiet, watching and waiting. The sudden disappearance of ships, the unexplained malfunctions, and the eerie silence. It all created an atmosphere of tension across the galaxy. What was Earth planning? And why was it so determined to remain in the shadows? In a secure facility located on the dark side of the moon, Earth's top scientists and military leaders gathered to discuss the next phase. President Laura Mendez stood in the center of the room, her face serious, yet calm. The time had come to take action, but she knew it had to be done carefully. The message had to be clear. No one could be allowed to misunderstand Earth's intentions. "We can't keep hiding forever," she said, her voice steady, but firm. "The Council will come after us if we don't make our intentions clear, but we need them to understand. This isn't about war. This is about justice." The scientists nodded in agreement. Earth had not built its fleet of advanced ships just to wage war. No, the ships were a symbol, a tool to send a clear message to the Galactic Council. Earth was not a helpless, weak world to be discarded and forgotten. It was a force to be reckoned with, a force that had been pushed too far. The Earth ships had been designed for one thing: to be invisible and to strike silently. They had been placed in the farthest reaches of Council space, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to make their presence known. But that moment had not come yet. The next phase would be different. The Earth ships would now show themselves, but not in the way the Council expected. They wouldn't launch an all-out attack. Instead, they would reveal their position, not through weapons, but through a signal that would send ripples through the Council's leadership. Earth's ships were now ready. The scientists activated a complex array of devices, ones that would allow Earth to send a direct message to the Council, but not one that would threaten them directly. It wasn't an explosion or an attack. It wasn't a weapon. Instead, it was something even more powerful, a communication. A message that would echo throughout the galaxy, reaching every corner of Council space. The first ship, called Eclipse, emerged from the shadows of a distant asteroid field. It was sleek, silent, and deadly in its elegance. It wasn't there to fight. It was there to make a statement. It moved through space with incredible speed, passing by various Council patrols without them ever noticing. The ship reached the edge of Council space and activated its communication system. For a brief moment, all of Council's ships in the vicinity detected something. A quiet signal cutting through the static of deep space. It wasn't loud or aggressive, but it was unmistakable. A voice came through, calm, measured, and unmistakably human. "You have hurt us. You have betrayed us. But we are not your enemy. We are humanity, and we will not be silenced." The message was brief, but its impact was immediate. It reverberated through every ship and station within range, echoing through the corridors of the Galactic Council. For a moment, the Council's leaders didn't know how to respond. Were these just the words of a single ship, or did they represent something far greater? The Council scrambled to decode the message. Was it a warning? Was it a threat? But before they could form any kind of response, Eclipse vanished back into the darkness, reappearing hundreds of miles away in a completely different part of Council space. It had already made its mark. The Council was no longer in control. They had underestimated Earth, thinking they could silence the human race by removing one ambassador. But now, Earth had found its voice, and it was speaking with a clarity the Council could not ignore. Back on Earth, the leaders of the planet watched the reaction from the Council. The silence that followed Eclipse's message was deafening. No one dared to respond immediately. But President Laura Mendez knew it wouldn't be long before the Council tried to retaliate. The galaxy was full of empires, but none had ever experienced something quite like this. Earth was not a naive planet anymore. It had learned, adapted, and had become a power in its own right. "Now we wait," Mendez said, her voice full of resolve. "The Council has been warned. What happens next is up to them." And so, Earth waited in the shadows, letting the message ripple through the Council. The next move would be critical, but one thing was certain: Earth would never be silenced again. The days that followed the transmission from Eclipse were filled with uncertainty, not just for the Galactic Council, but for everyone across the galaxy. Earth had spoken, but what did it mean? What would the Council do in response? And more importantly, how would the people of Earth handle the consequences of their actions? On Earth, the leaders were not resting. They had made their move, and now they were preparing for what was to come next. President Mendez convened a high-level meeting with her top advisors, military commanders, and the heads of Earth's most advanced scientific research teams. The message had been sent, but they needed to plan for the next stage. "We've made our point," President Mendez said, her voice steady but serious. "But we all know the Council won't just sit back. They will retaliate, one way or another. The question is, what do we do next?" The room fell silent. For the first time in weeks, no one was sure of the answer. The Earth ships were powerful, yes, but they were still few in number. The Galactic Council controlled most of the known galaxy, with fleets, armies, and vast resources at their disposal. Earth had caught their attention, but it was not yet clear whether Earth could withstand the storm that was sure to follow. A young scientist, Dr. Ada Park, stood up. She had been one of the key figures behind Earth's new technology. "We're not just relying on the ships," she said, her voice full of conviction. "The message wasn't just about showing strength. It was about showing the Council that we have a new way of thinking, a way that they've never encountered before." President Mendez nodded. She understood. Earth wasn't going to meet force with force alone. Instead, they were going to outsmart the Council. It wasn't just about weapons. It was about using their greatest asset, their minds. Earth had developed technologies and tactics that the Council had not even dreamed of. "Exactly," Mendez agreed. "We've built ships that can hide in plain sight, but we need more than that. We need the ability to move faster than they can react, to strike before they even know we're there. We need to be able to turn the tables on them, not just play defense." Dr. Park stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "We've already developed prototypes for faster-than-light communication and navigation. If we can refine those, we can launch targeted operations before the Council even realizes we're on their doorstep. We'll become a moving shadow, unseen until we make our move." A wave of murmurs spread through the room. It wasn't just about winning battles. It was about turning the tide completely, outpacing the Council at every turn, making them wonder if Earth was still even part of their galaxy. But as Mendez looked around the room, she knew that no plan would succeed unless Earth stood united. There were voices of doubt, those who questioned whether humanity could truly face the might of the Council without igniting full-scale war. Others feared that Earth had already gone too far, and there was no turning back. "We are a species that has always adapted," Mendez said, her voice filled with strength. "We've been pushed to the brink before. We fought battles for our survival on this planet, and now we're facing a challenge that will determine not just our future, but the future of our place in the galaxy. This is our moment to show the universe that humanity is not a force to be ignored. We are not just surviving. We're thriving." The room was quiet, the weight of her words sinking in. Then, slowly, the murmurs died down as the team started to understand what had to be done. Meanwhile, the Council was in turmoil. They had underestimated Earth's response, and now they were scrambling to make sense of the situation. The initial shock of Eclipse's message had worn off, but now they faced a new reality. Earth had turned the tables on them, and the Council's old tactics weren't going to work anymore. Counselor Ilara Zen, one of the leaders of the Council's military division, paced back and forth in her command center. She had always been known for her calm, calculated decisions, but now her usual poise was slipping. Earth had caught them off guard, and she didn't like it. "They've shown us their hand," Zen said to her staff. "They're not going to back down. We've underestimated them, and now we need to find a way to regain control." Her advisors were quiet, unsure how to proceed. They had expected a swift collapse of Earth's resolve after the loss of their envoy, but what had followed was nothing like they had imagined. Earth wasn't backing down. Instead, they were sending signals of strength and unity. "We need to show them that their defiance has consequences," Zen continued, her tone colder. "We can't allow them to think they've won. We'll send a message of our own." But despite her words, something in her gut told her that this was only the beginning. Earth's defiance wasn't something that could be easily quashed, and even if they responded with force, the galaxy might begin to view Earth differently. Back on Earth, Mendez watched the Council's movements carefully, aware that their response could come at any time. Her military advisors continued to monitor Council activity, knowing that every move they made had to be precise. Earth had put the Council on notice, and now the waiting game had begun. The message from Eclipse had done its job. It had shaken the foundation of the Galactic Council, forcing them to acknowledge Earth's presence and power. But now, it was time to build on that momentum. The next phase wasn't just about sending another message. It was about setting the stage for a new reality. A reality where Earth wasn't just a player in the game, but a force that no one could ignore. The stakes were higher than ever, but Earth had already shown that it could play in the big leagues, and now they were ready to face whatever came next. As the days passed, the tension between Earth and the Galactic Council reached new heights. The galaxy had never seen such an unpredictable turn of events, and now the question that everyone was asking was whether Earth was truly ready to handle the consequences of its defiance. Back on Earth, President Mendez stood at the edge of the command center's viewing platform, her eyes fixed on the stars. The vastness of space seemed so distant yet so close, as though it could swallow them whole or lift them to heights they had never imagined. It was a moment of reflection, of understanding that everything was changing, forever. The next phase of Earth's strategy was more subtle, more complex. Earth wasn't just going to respond in a way the Council expected. No, they were going to alter the very rules of the game. Instead of continuing the cat-and-mouse approach, Earth's leadership had decided to build alliances with other systems that had been under the Council's thumb for far too long. There were dozens of planets that had quietly suffered under the Council's rule, worlds that had been forced into submission, their resources drained, their people subjugated. These systems had little power to oppose the Council, but they had one thing that Earth had: a shared desire for freedom. Mendez understood the power of unity, of bringing together those who had been oppressed and showing them that resistance wasn't just a dream. It was a reality that could be achieved. In secret, Earth sent envoys to these planets, opening channels of communication, offering support, and most importantly, creating a network of resistance. These weren't huge military alliances, at least not yet, but a loose coalition of worlds that shared the same grievances and the same desire for change. Each planet had its own history, its own struggles, but now they were no longer alone. They were a part of something bigger, something that could not be easily dismantled by the Council. And for the first time in centuries, they could see a future where they would no longer be controlled by an oppressive force. Back in the heart of the Galactic Council, the leaders were growing increasingly anxious. They had received word of the growing unrest among their subjects, and while they believed they still had the upper hand, they couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was happening just out of reach, something they couldn't fully grasp. Councillor Ilara Zen was once again at the center of the Council's military division, preparing her response. Their initial reactions had been swift and forceful, but now things were different. Earth's tactics had disrupted their plans, and the ripple effects were starting to show in unexpected ways. The systems Earth had contacted were showing signs of resistance, and the entire structure of the Council was beginning to feel more fragile than it ever had before. "What's happening?" Zen asked her advisors, her voice edged with frustration. "We've already shown them our strength. Why are they not backing down?" One of her subordinates, a younger officer, hesitated before speaking. "It's not just Earth, Counselor. We've been receiving reports from several systems in the outer sectors. There are signs of solidarity, small at first, but growing. They've begun to reach out to each other." Zen's eyes narrowed as she processed this information. Earth wasn't just shaking the Council's confidence, it was sparking a movement, a wave of resistance that was spreading far beyond what they had anticipated. She realized that the Council's old methods of control, brute force, subjugation, and fear, were no longer enough. "The question is," Zen muttered to herself, "how do we stop it?" Back on Earth, President Mendez was preparing for the next move. The network of resistance was growing, and the time had come to take a step forward. She called her top advisors into the room. "We've created something bigger than just a response to the Council's actions," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We've created a movement. It's time we officially stand with the other systems. We need to show the galaxy that this isn't just Earth against the Council. This is the beginning of a new era." They weren't just building ships or creating weapons. They were creating a new kind of power. Power built on alliances, on unity, on shared values that transcended the old ways of thinking. Earth's strength was no longer just in its technology or its fleet. It was in its ability to inspire others, to show that they didn't have to face the Council's oppression alone. Mendez's advisors nodded, recognizing the significance of what she was saying. It was no longer a question of how they could defend Earth from the Council. It was now about how they could defend the entire galaxy from the old, corrupt system of control that the Council had imposed. It was about something much larger than any single world. Meanwhile, the resistance movement was beginning to take shape, hidden across the galaxy, from the cold moons of far-off worlds to the crowded cities on the edges of Council space. People were beginning to rise up. It wasn't an army. Not yet, but it was a spark that could turn into a flame. As Earth's new coalition began to grow stronger, the Council found itself at a crossroads. Zen and her counterparts knew they had to act fast, but they also knew that any action they took now would have far-reaching consequences. This wasn't just a battle over resources or power anymore. It was about the future of the galaxy, about who would shape the new age. The Council had always thought of itself as the supreme authority, but Earth's message had already started to dismantle that illusion. For the first time in a long while, the Council wasn't in control of the situation, and they were starting to realize that this new chapter of galactic history might be one they wouldn't be able to rewrite.